Okay, we have to do surgery. This is an antique doll from the 1800s. Now, my husband likes to take my antiques and just throw them in garbage bags and in bins. We'll check the reveal out in a moment. She is being surgically, there's a surgical thing going on here. Now, these things were made out of like wood. A lot of these bodies were made out of wood. Now, her leg has broken off. I just stuck one piece on here. And this part has to be attached to this part. And yeah, ugh, what a mess, what a mess. You see what happens when your family members just take your things? I'm like really aggravated right now. So if you hear contempt in my voice, it's because of this. So my husband threw this in a bin with like 20 pounds of shit on top of it, and it busted off a leg of an antique doll that's actually valuable. This thing was in pristine condition until he threw so much stuff on it that he cracked part of the torso also. And I'm really raging mad right now. I have the glue gun. This is wood. I would prefer wood glue with a clamp and leave it on overnight. I don't know how well the glue gun situation is going to work. But I do not have crazy glue. I do not have Gorilla Glue. So, this is a nightmare. So I need someone to pull the leg out. It's an elastic band that's it is attached to. Don't know if you can see it. Let me try to show it to you. So the leg is attached to a elastic band. You can see the elastic band right under here. And I need someone to actually stretch it out and hold it for me so I can try to reattach the leg. But nobody wants to help around here. So I'm going to be sort of bitchy about this. So, yeah, hopefully we can get her back together again and do the reveal and see what she looks like. Okay, so I finagled this. Now, I asked for help. I was told no help will be given. So we're going to do surgery. Yes, her one leg is backwards. And we're going to do surgery. I'm going to try to do surgery. And, yeah. Okay, so this is a clean break. And I got to figure out which side goes where. Okay, it's all back together sloppily. I added an extra layer of glue. It's no big deal. Seriously, for doll collectors, we're used to this. But who is the doll? Okay, this doll was made in 1890 by a German firm by the name of Bahr and Proschild. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but it's either Bahr, B-A-H-R, or Bahr. I believe it's spelled B-A-H-R, and Proschild. And I don't pronounce German very well. Okay, so this doll has a number. If you look here on the back of her head, it's number 224. Don't know if you can see that, very hard to make out. Well, this doll has a history, and it's a really cool history. So in 1890, Thomas Alva Edison created the first talking doll. One of the faces and the heads that were used to make his talking doll was made by Bahr and Proschild, and he used the 224 mold. He also used another one made by a company in Germany by the name of Simon and Halbig. And I have both those dolls. And yeah, both those models that Edison used. Now, the cool part was the torso, which you see here, was made out of metal, and it had tiny holes in it. And a little wax cylinder record would be played by turning a crank. And I'm going to actually show you the recordings, actual recordings of a few of those dolls that are still left. Now, it was an absolute disaster for Edison. Edison thought he had like the $1 million invention. He was going to make a doll that actually, it spoke nursery rhymes. So ladies would sit in his factory for hours, all day long, actually placing their voices inside like a little cone-shaped apparatus, and they would turn a crank and it would actually form some kind of sounds onto a record, which was made out of like a wax cylinder. And they would do like Hickory Dickory Dock, The Mouse Ran Up the Clock, or Three Blind Mice, all that other stuff. And so what happened was the doll was a freaking disaster. It terrified children, to the point where all the dolls that he bought was scrapped. They were returned to all the stores almost instantaneously. The kids were terrified of it. And so his genius idea ended up, actually being a flop, a complete flop. So you think Chatty Cathy was the first talking doll? You're wrong. They made them in 1890. Now, the Jumeau firm, a French firm, made a phonograph doll. Sorry, I'm having a frog in my throat. Made a phonograph doll that was much better than Edison's. Right after Edison created his doll. And so what happened was the French version, we'll find a lot of those, although they're worth a lot of money, we'll find a lot of those on the market, but not Edison's dolls because they were all returned. And what happened was basically the dolls just sat in his warehouse and until I guess he sold off the stock. And the companies that bought the stock that was left over from his returned dolls, they removed it and, removed the metal torso and put a wooden torso back in there. And so not all of these were Edison's talking dolls that were returned. Some of these are regular German, same model head, Bahr and Proschild dolls, number 224 molds. And some of these were not actually part of Edison's original stock. And so we're going to go over it. Now, this is amazing. Look how articulated this body is. How the joints, if I could take her dress off, I would show you. But you can see she's even got knees, little kneecaps. I don't want to mess around with this too much because of what happened, how I had to glue it back on. But the legs would actually bend. And you could put it in all different positions. So the doll could be seated. It could be standing. The arms are articulated. And you can turn the wrists all around. You can turn the elbows. You can turn the arms up. You can have them wave at you. You can have them at her side. Really, really a cool innovation. Now, before they made dolls with these type of jointed bodies, they actually had the heads placed and attached in one piece. So from the head to here would be porcelain. It would be just one bisque piece. Now, this is a socket head, completely different because the head completely turns and swivels. Now, the other ones, the earlier dolls on kid bodies, the heads did not swivel. Now, they did make kid body dolls in one piece with the porcelain and the porcelain head and the neck, and right up to about here would be one chunk of porcelain on kid bodies. But this was more innovative and more expensive. Now, she's missing some digits. No big deal. To a doll collector, that's really not a problem. All the value is in the head. If the head is shattered or broken, this doll is actually worthless. If there's one tiny little chip or crack, the doll is like 80% less valuable. So all the value is in the head. Now, let's take a look at this. Now, the more expensive dolls, now we know, had these jointed bodies. Before these jointed bodies were invented, by the way, they even have belly buttons on these things. Before these bodies, these segmented bodies were created, they did have kid body dolls, but then they still continued to make kid body dolls, but they were the cheaper version. And again, we're missing a digit, no biggie, no big deal at all. The body, this one is made out of like mostly carved wood. Now, as time went on, around the late 1890s, early, about 1900, 1905, 1910, 1915, around there, the bodies were actually mixed with mostly composition and wood. So you wouldn't just get like carved wood. Like you saw, this was wood, right? It would be like mixed composition, which was like sawdust and wood mixed with like plaster of Paris and other components, which would be much more lightweight than solid wood. This is solid carved wood, which is amazing. They used a lathe, don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, to actually create these parts. And yeah, so she's articulated and she can move. And unfortunately, we got this situation going on here. So this does have a little composition in it. You can see the plaster of Paris, but these legs are solid wood. And you can see the carving of the wood. Look at the veins of the wood. Really amazing. All right, so let's look at her features, which are quite interesting. We got these teeth, right? It freaks a lot of people out. Now, the older dolls or earlier dolls than 1890 had closed mouths without these teeth showing. Actually, the more expensive dolls, if you're a collector, are the closed mouth dolls. You want the closed mouth dolls because they're less found. They're not found as often. Although, even when these open mouth versions came out with the teeth, they still did make closed mouth version dolls, but they were actually cheaper. So, but for some reason, the collectors like those closed mouth dolls because less of them were actually made. And more likely, French dolls have closed mouths. French dolls are actually the Cadillac of collecting. If you're collecting antique dolls, you would much rather want a French doll than a German doll. Why is that? Because the German dolls were mass produced in quantity more than quality. Although there were great companies like Bahr and Proschild, Kessner, Simon and Halbig making really high quality dolls that were consistent. Then there was companies that made quantity and made them mass produced much more on a greater scale for cheaper. And so they were all actually competing against each other. And the doll capital of the world, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this right, was Sonneberg, Germany. And so they made a lot of these dolls over there in Germany. Germany was the toy capital of the world during the Victorian era, before the Victorian era, and right about up until about World War I, when we no longer wanted German products. Now, Germany was the China back then for pretty much everything. Germany had this cottage industry where they would make dolls in people's homes. So they would mass produce them and also in homes and also in factories. So a family would sit at the table, and yes, children also. And one person would make the wigs. Another person would paint the eyebrows. Another person would insert the porcelain teeth into the mouth. Another person would make the body parts. Another person and whole family sat at a table all day long doing this. And then so the heads would be painted and they would be carted off to the factory where they were finished off. And so somebody in the factory would put the body together with the elastic bands. Another person would place the eyes in there. So they were also craftsmen that would make these hand-blown glass eyes that looked realistic. So they were glass blowers. Everything about these was art, if you think about it. No, that is not a hairline crack. That's something that I'm terrified of. If you see something like that, that looks, it's hair, thankfully. If it's a hairline crack, the doll is toast, not worth anything. But back to what I was saying. So there's a whole industry. There was somebody that would insert the eyes. Now, these are fixed eyes. So these eyes never slept. Now, what I mean by that is if you're not a doll collector, some dolls would have sleeping eyes. Now, the earlier dolls had fixed eyes like this, where they did not close. When you lean the doll back, they did not close. Those are actually less expensive. Now, when they came out with the eyes that slept, those dolls were more expensive because it was a new commodity on the market, a thing that little girls wanted. It had a lead weight inside of it. So when you tilted the head back, the eyes would actually turn this way and you'd see the eyelids and it would look like the doll was sleeping. And so the earlier dolls have these fixed eyes, or the cheaper dolls. Now the more expensive dolls would have sleep eyes, but this is an early doll since it's circa 1890. And so around there, I don't think they had that innovation yet with the sleeping eyes. Now look how masterfully this is painted. Look at that. I mean, wow. Look at those eyebrows. It even has striations to make it look like it's feathered. Somebody really was a good artist, whoever painted this doll. And wow. Okay, look, she even has ears and they're pierced. Now that was another thing. This was generally a French thing. So usually French dolls had pierced ears. Now pierced ears are generally a French trait, although some German makers had pierced the doll's ears. Some companies by the name of Simon and Halbig usually had pierced ear dolls. But little girls would love to add earrings onto their dolls. Also, these wigs are really quite amazing. Now, they either came in human hair. Yes, real human hair. Women who had long hair, who didn't cut their hair for like a decade or 5 years or whatever, had hair down to their waist, would sell their hair to the factories. And they would make wigs out of them. Now, this is goat hair. It's like from the goat or from a sheep. And it's mohair. And I like mohair wigs much better because they're easier to tame and keep neat. The human hair ones are all flyaway and messy, but this is really nice. It's in banana curls. Okay, so I'm going to show you her face and an example of an Edison doll. And you can see side by side now it's a different color hair, but they came in all different color hair. And believe it or not, brunette was more common than blonde because most people were brunette. And you can see it's the same face. And this is an Edison doll, and it's pretty cool. So on the left, I just want to show you the full Edison doll and what it looks like. And you can see the torso is metal and the rest of the body is made out of the same type of turned wood that I showed you that she had. Her lower legs, it's exactly the same. And I have a feeling that this may have been an Edison reject and that it was probably returned and Edison probably sold off the stock, and maybe they actually took the metal torso out and the record player out and actually resold it. He probably tried to recoup some of his money. I don't know how much money he lost, but he lost everything pretty much over these dolls. He did not make a penny on these dolls and lost out.
It still holds the record for number of United States patents with over 1,000. Well, if you've ever wondered what those other inventions are, wonder no more. Thomas Edison's work on the phonograph, on lighting, and on direct current electricity lifted him to the heights of the world's most famous inventors. But for each acclaimed success, there were countless quiet failures. Kristen Gallerno met me in one of Edison's machine shops in Greenfield Village to talk about the Wizard of Menlo Park and his less successful endeavors. What are some that are maybe not so well known?
Well, we could talk about the tassimeter, which was an astronomical device used to measure the coronas of the sun. He invented the electric pen, which became the tattoo gun.
Right, that's right.
And he even invented a method to preserve fruit using vacuum sealing technology. But then we also have these.
Edison's talking dolls.
Edison is working on the phonograph in 1877. And around that time, he brainstorms this list for all the different uses for the phonograph.
And one of those uses, a talking doll. Does she have a name?
She doesn't have a name, but she does have a voice. So if you look at her torso, it's made out of metal, and there are these little holes pierced in there. And what that is, it's a mechanism to allow sound to escape. These are scaled down phonographs that would have been inside this doll.
Did all the dolls say the same things?
No, they had different recorded rhymes. So like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, Hickory, Dickory, Dock, Jack and Jill. They were spoken onto these tiny little phonographs by women working in Edison's factory, and they had to shout really loud to get the sound on record. We think of the very first entertainment records, the very first children's records, the very first time that women's voices are recorded on record, they all happened with this doll.
They all emanate from a talking doll.
Yes.
The talking part of it is the innovation.
Absolutely, yeah. The tiny phonograph, the scaled down phonograph inside is definitely the innovation of the talking doll.
Can I hear what an Edison talking doll would sound like?
Yeah, I can play you a sample on my phone.
I mean, I'm sorry, it sounds like a horror film.
There's worse ones than this. They were received not very well. Children found them to be a little on the scary side, but they were also heavy, they broke, the sound recordings just weren't up to people's standards.
So Edison didn't just invent the talking doll, he invented the creepy doll idea.
What's really interesting is that these dolls existed before we could duplicate phonographic records. And so the women that were saying these rhymes on record, every single phonograph that exists, it's a unique take.
Oh, I mean, truly unique.
Yes.
Right? Each of these dolls was truly one of a kind.
Absolutely.
While original, the dolls were a commercial flop. But the creepy recordings paved the way for more successful talking dolls that would come later, such as Chatty Cathy, popular in the 1960s. To close out this segment, it would be nice to hear from Edison's talking doll again.
Okay.
I actually have to be somewhere, so I'll see you later.
Okay, so finding them with the actual metal torso, and the record player inside that's even in working condition is like finding a diamond in the rough. You will not, it's like there's like so few of them left. Like I said, he 86'd it. He got rid of these dolls. They actually languished and sat around until he sold them off just to make some money and recoup some money. And this was one of the models that he did use. A German manufacturer by the name of Bahr and Proschild made this doll. Although he did use heads by Salmon and Halbig also. This doll is actually not found that often. I wouldn't say it's rare, but this 224 mold is not very commonly found, although it can be found if you collect it, but without the metal torso. You're not going to get the metal torso or the record playing disc in there. If you do, and it's working and it's not damaged, oh my God, you're sitting on a small mint. But as is, like she is with her wooden body, I used to sell antique dolls. Now, I sold them many years ago, and I used to make good money selling antique dolls, although I liked to keep most of them in my collection. By the way, she needs a pair of earrings. I would probably not sell this doll for less than $600 to about $900 as is. Even with the re-glued leg and the damaged digits, all the value is in the head. She has her original mohair wig, really nice. I added the little bows, of course. And her dress is actually original. It's antique. She's missing her undergarment, sadly. I added new shoes because she's missing shoes and stockings. But we had a successful surgery. She's now upright and she's sitting, and she's actually a quite beautiful doll. And now I know why Edison actually commissioned this company to make the heads for him. Look at the eyes. Look at the realism. Look at those eyebrows and the nose, the little pert little nose. Look at that with a little dimple in the chin, a dimple above the lips, the little inserted little porcelain teeth, and those eyes. I just can't get over it. Look at the spirals. Somebody hand blown that in Germany. And wow. Okay, so I hope you learned something today. It was quite interesting. And there's a fly on her. Get the hell out of here, you bastard. All right, thanks for watching. See you guys all soon. And yeah, this is Doll History, the Bahr and Proschild mold number 224.